Stop procrastinating like a samurai. One simple move. Koden Obscure Prologue. The warrior who waited too long. In the spring of 1582, as cherry blossoms fell across feudal Japan, a young samurai named Hideaki stood frozen outside the dojo where his master waited. He'd been standing there for 3 hours, not because he was meditating, not because he was preparing, but because he couldn't bring himself to go inside and confess that he'd failed again to complete the training assignment his master had given him. 3 months ago, I'll do it tomorrow, he'd told himself every day for 90 days. When I'm more prepared, when the conditions are right, when I feel ready. Now his master had summoned him, and Hideaki knew the reckoning had come. Finally, as the sun began to set, he gathered his courage and entered the dojo. His master, the legendary swordsman Takeda Shingen, sat in meditation. Without opening his eyes, he spoke. You've been standing outside my door for 3 hours, procrastinating even about facing your procrastination. Hideaki's face burned with shame. Sit, Takeda commanded. Hideaki sat. Tell me, Takeda said, finally opening his eyes. What have you been doing for the past 3 months instead of the training I assigned? Master, I intended to do it. Every day, I told myself I would begin, but something always came up, or I didn't feel ready, or the timing wasn't right. I kept waiting for the perfect moment. And did the perfect moment come? No, Master, it never does. Takeda stood and walked to the weapons wall, where dozens of swords hung. He selected one old worn, its edge clearly used. Do you know what killed more samurai than battle? Disease? Master. Hesitation. Takeda turned to face him. The warrior who waits for the perfect moment dies with his sword still sheathed. The warrior who acts even imperfectly lives to fight another day. He held out the worn sword. This blade has seen 50 battles. It is nicked, scratched, imperfect, but it has tasted victory 50 times. That perfect sword on the wall? He gestured to a pristine katana. It has never left its scabbard. It waits for the perfect battle that never comes. Takeda placed the worn sword in Hideaki's hands. You want to know the secret to ending procrastination? The secret every samurai must learn or die? Yes, Master. Koden Obscure, the code of obscure action. Or as we say, begin in darkness. Start before you're ready. Move before you're prepared. Act before you know the outcome. This is the warrior's way. But Master, what if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? You already have failed. For 3 months. By not beginning, Takeda sat back down. Now I will teach you what I should have taught you as a child. The single move that separates the warrior from the coward. The one simple technique that ends procrastination forever. The monk's lesson. The next morning, Takeda didn't take Hideaki to the training grounds. Instead, they walked to a Zen monastery on the mountain above the village. An elderly monk named Daichi greeted them. Takeda, you've brought another student afflicted with the waiting disease. He has spent 3 months preparing to prepare, Takeda confirmed. Daichi nodded knowingly. Come, I'll show you something. He led them to the monastery's garden, where a young monk stood before a large canvas, brush in hand, staring at the blank white surface. Hideaki noticed immediately the monk was trembling. How long has he been standing there? Hideaki whispered. 6 hours, Daichi replied. He is waiting for inspiration, waiting for the perfect vision, waiting to feel ready. As they watched, the young monk finally lowered his brush without making a single mark, and walked away, shoulders slumped in defeat. Every day the same, Daichi said. He dreams of creating masterpieces, but he never begins. Because beginning means facing imperfection, and he cannot bear to create something that isn't already perfect in his mind. What will happen to him? Hideaki asked. He will leave the monastery, return to the world, live an ordinary life, never knowing what he might have created because he never gave himself permission to create badly. Daichi led them to another part of the garden, where an older monk sat before dozens of completed paintings. Some were beautiful, some were terrible, most were somewhere in between. Master Jiro, Daichi introduced. Show them your first painting. Jiro pulled out a scrolla, childlike clumsy painting, of a tree. Awful, isn't it? I was 40 when I painted that. I'd wanted to paint my entire life but never started because I knew I'd be bad. What changed? Hideaki asked. I watched my friend die. We'd made plans together, travel, create art, live fully. He kept saying someday. Someday never came. At his funeral, I realized, I'm going to die too, probably soon. And I can die having never painted anything. Or I can die having painted badly. He gestured to the hundreds of scrolls around him. So I gave myself permission to be terrible. And I was, for years, but then something happened. I got better. Not because I waited for readiness, but because I began in unreadiness. The first teaching, begin in darkness. Back at the dojo, Takeda spread out a scroll. The samurai code contains a secret teaching, passed down for generations. We call it Koden Obscure, begin in darkness. Start before you see the path. Move before you know the way. He drew a simple diagram. Procrastinator's trap. Wait for clarity gives. Wait for readiness gives. Wait for perfect conditions gives. Never begin a samurai's path. Begin in darkness gives clarity. Comes through action, gives readiness. Comes through doing, gives perfect conditions. Never exist. You want to know why you procrastinate? Takeda asked. Because I'm lazy, Hideaki guessed. No, because you're afraid. Afraid of looking foolish? Afraid of doing it wrong? Afraid of discovering you're not as good as you imagine yourself to be? So you wait. You prepare to prepare. You research how to start instead of starting. You create the illusion of progress while making no progress at all. Hideaki felt exposed. This was exactly what he'd been doing. The samurai understood something modern people have forgotten. Takeda continued. Clarity comes from engagement, not thought. Readiness comes from action, not preparation. You don't think your way into a new way of acting. You act your way into a new way of thinking. But how do I begin when I don't feel ready? By understanding that feeling ready is a myth. No warrior ever felt ready for his first battle. No artist ever felt ready for their first painting. No master ever felt ready to take their first student. Ready is something you become by doing, not something you wait to feel. The second teaching, the 2-minute move. Now I teach you the technique, Takeda said. The one simple move that ends procrastination. We call it Enai Fun no Yugoki, the 2-minute move. He pulled out a training sword and handed it to Hida. I want you to practice the overhead strike. For 2 hours. Right now, Hideaki felt the familiar resistance rising. 2 hours. That was so long, he wasn't warmed up. He'd need to wait. Takeda interrupted his thoughts. I changed my mind. Don't do 2 hours. Do just 2 minutes. 2 minutes felt manageable. Hideaki nodded. But here's the rule. You must start within the next 30 seconds. No preparing, no warming up, no getting in the right mindset. Just pick up the sword and begin. Now. Hideaki picked up the sword and began the overhead strike. Once, twice, 10 times. The 2 minutes passed quickly. Stop, Takeda said. How do you feel? I feel like I could keep going. Exactly. This is the secret. The hardest part is always the beginning. So we make the beginning so small that the resistance cannot grow. 2 minutes. Anyone can do anything for 2 minutes, Takeda explained. When you think I need to train for 2 hours, your mind sees the whole mountain and feels overwhelmed. But when you think I'll just do 2 minutes, the mind relaxes. The resistance dissolves. And once you begin, momentum takes over. But 2 minutes isn't enough to accomplish anything, isn't it? You just did 20 repetitions. Tomorrow, do 2 minutes again. In a week, that's 140 repetitions. In a month, 600. In a year, 7,300. All from just 2 minutes. But I could do more than 2 minutes. Could you? Then do it. But you must start with a commitment of only 2 minutes. Make the beginning so easy that you cannot say no. Once you begin, you may continue. But you must never skip the 2-minute commitment. The third teaching, no 0 days over. The next week Hideaki practiced the 2-minute move. Some days, he did only 2 minutes. Other days, he got into flow and practiced for an hour. But he never missed a day. On the 8th day, Takeda asked, what have you learned? That beginning is everything. Once I start, continuing is easy. It's only the starting that's hard. Good. Now the second principle of Koden Obscure, no 0 days. The samurai code demands, never let a day pass where you make 0 progress toward your purpose. He drew another diagram. 0 days equals death of momentum. 0 day gives. 2 0 days gives 3 0 days gives project abandoned down. No 0 days equals unstoppable momentum. Small action gives. Next day easier gives habit forms, gives mastery inevitable. 2 minutes is enough, Takeda explained. 2 minutes is never 0. The procrastinator thinks, if I can't do it perfectly, I won't do it at all. The warrior thinks, even imperfect action beats perfect inaction. But what if I'm tired, busy, not feeling it? Then do 1 minute. 30 seconds, 1 single repetition, but never 0. Because 0 breaks the chain. 0 tells your mind, this is optional. This is something I do when I feel like it. But the warrior's way is not optional. It is who you are. The monks return a week later. Daichi visited the dojo, bringing with him a man Hideaki didn't recognize, younger, dressed in the clothes of a traveling scholar. This is Kenji Daichi, introduced. He left our monastery 10 years ago to study in China. He has learned much about the mind and how it works. I thought he might illuminate why Koden Obscure is so effective. Kenji bowed respectfully. Master Takeda, I have studied what the Chinese call Shinlik Sooth, the science of the mind, and I have discovered that what you call Koden Obscure aligns perfectly with how the human mind actually functions. Tell us, Takeda invited. Understanding resistance. The mind has 2 modes. Kenji explained, drawing in the dirt, the thinking mode, and the doing mode. When you sit and contemplate doing something, you are in thinking mode, and thinking mode always finds reasons not to act. He drew a circle. Thinking a mode asks all obstacles, imagines all ways to fail, requires perfect conditions, creates resistance. Then another circle. Doing a mode focuses on immediate action, learns, by trying, adapts to conditions, creates momentum. The procrastinator lives in thinking mode, always analyzing, planning, preparing, but never doing. The warrior lives in doing mode. He begins before the thinking mode can object. This is why the 2-minute move works, Kenji continued. 2 minutes is so small that the thinking mode doesn't perceive it as a threat. No time for resistance to build. You're in action before the mind realizes what's happening. What about the days when resistance is strong? Hideaki asked. When I really don't want to do it. Ah, that's the genius of no 0 days. Kenji smiled. Your mind is always tracking patterns. When you do something every day, the mind learns. This is non-negotiable. Resistance stops rising because resistance is pointless. But skip 1 day, and the mind learns. This is negotiable. Resistance returns stronger. The momentum principle. Takeda nodded. The old masters understood this without knowing the Chinese science. They said, moving water never stagnates. Once in motion, staying in motion is easy. But water that stops becomes stale. Exactly, Kenji agreed. In Slaitsu we call this the momentum principle. Starting requires enormous energy like pushing a boulder. But once moving, it takes minimal energy to keep going. He demonstrated with a story. I knew a writer in China who couldn't finish her book. She would write intensely for weeks, then stop for months. Each time she stopped, restarting required tremendous effort. She felt like a failure. Then a master taught her, write 1 sentence per day. Just 1. Some days, she wrote only 1 sentence. Other days, the 1 sentence became 10 pages. But she never had 0 days. In 1 year, she completed 3 books, all because she never let the momentum die. This is the secret, Takeda summarized. The warrior doesn't rely on motivation. Motivation is like weather, sometimes present, sometimes absent. The warrior relies on momentum, and momentum comes from consistency, not intensity. The psychology of beginning. Let me show you something else, Kenji said. He pointed to Hid. Think about training for 2 hours. What do you feel? Hideaki closed his eyes. Resistance. It feels heavy, like I don't want to. Now think about training for 2 minutes. That feels fine. Easy, actually. This is what the Chinese call Xinjing mental load. Your mind assigns energy cost to tasks. Big task equals big resistance. Small task equals small resistance. By making the beginning tiny, you trick the resistance mechanism. But doesn't the mind realize you're doing more than 2 minutes eventually? Hideaki asked. Yes, but by then, you're already in motion. Already in doing mode. The resistance can't form because you're past the starting point. Takeda laughed. So Koden Obscure is a trick. The wisest trick, Kenji confirmed. The trick that lets you accomplish what you genuinely want to accomplish, but keep sabotaging through procrastination. The fear beneath the delay. 1 month into his practice, Hideaki hit a wall. Despite the 2-minute move, despite the no 0 days commitment, he found himself procrastinating on a specific advanced technique Takeda had assigned. I can't do it, Hideaki confessed. Every other technique I practice. But this one, I can't even begin. Interesting, Takeda observed. This is the 4th teaching. Sometimes procrastination is a message. Tell me what happens when you think about starting this technique. Hideaki closed his eyes. I feel afraid, like I'll discover I'm not actually good enough to learn it. Ah, now we reach the deeper truth. Takeda sat down. You procrastinate not because you're lazy. You procrastinate because attempting means risking the discovery that you're not who you think you are, he explained. There are 2 types of procrastination. Surface procrastination, simple, resistance to discomfort, that the 2-minute move solves. But deep procrastination, fear of identity-threatening failure, requires different medicine. The identity question. Ask yourself, Takeda said, who do you imagine yourself to be? And what will you have to confront if you try this technique and fail? Hideaki thought deeply. I imagine I'm potentially great. If I really tried, I could be exceptional. But if I try this technique and discover I'm just average, then I have to give up that story about myself. So you stay in potential. Never tested, never proven wrong, never proven right. Takeda nodded. This is the trap of the gifted. Better to be potentially great than actually mediocre. What's the solution? The 5th teaching. Kill the identity. Free the warrior. Let me tell you about my own master. When I was young, I imagined myself a great swordsman. I trained hard, but never in public, never in real contests. Because as long as I didn't test myself, I could maintain the fantasy of my greatness. My master saw this. One day, he announced I would fight in a tournament against real warriors. I was terrified. I procrastinated preparing. I made excuses. Finally, he said, you cling to the fantasy of your greatness. Today, you will lose that fantasy. And then, freed from fantasy, you can begin to build real skill. He was right. I lost badly in the tournament. It was humiliating, but also I was free from the burden of imagined potential. I could finally work with who I actually was, not who I imagined I might be. The permission to suck, so I should accept that I'll fail at this technique? Hideaki asked. No, you should accept that you might fail. And that failing doesn't make you worthless, it makes you a beginner. And every master was once a bad beginner. Takeda stood and picked up a training sword. Watch. He performed the advanced technique perfectly, effortlessly. Then he said, now watch me do it badly. He performed it again, but this time deliberately clumsy, unbalanced, awkward. See, I can still do it badly. Being able to do it badly is the first step to doing it well. Now you try. Permission to be terrible. With that permission, Hideaki tried. He was terrible, but he'd started the 6th teaching, Takeda said. Give yourself permission to suck. The procrastinator demands perfection from attempt 1. The warrior accepts that the path to good goes through bad. Building the anti-procrastination practice over the next 3 months. Takeda taught Hideaki a complete system based on Koden Obscure, not just philosophy, but practical daily techniques. Morning protocol. Each morning, Takeda instructed, before your mind wakes fully and resistance forms, you move. No thinking, just action. The routine. Open eyes, count backwards from 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Stand up, begin. First 2-minute commitment. No negotiation with yourself. Why count backwards? Hideaki asked. Because it occupies the thinking mind. Gives it a task. While it's counting, the doing mind takes over. By 1, you're already moving. The 3 daily non-negotiables. Every samurai has 3 commitments that happen every day, regardless of mood, weather, or circumstance, Takeda explained. For Hida, these became 2 minutes of sword technique practice, 2 minutes of meditation, 2 minutes of reading warrior philosophy, only 2 minutes each, Hideaki asked. That's only 6 minutes total. Yes, because 6 minutes you will do, 60 minutes you will skip. And skip once, you break the chain. Keep the chain unbroken, and these 2-minute practices grow naturally into hours. Evening review. Each evening you write 3 things. What 2-minute commitments did I complete? Where did I begin in darkness today? What am I procrastinating tomorrow, and what's the 2-minute move to start it? This keeps you honest, Takeda explained. The mind lies to itself. Writing makes lies visible. The resistance journal now. The advanced practice, Takeda said, handing Hideaki a small journal. When you feel strong resistance to something, you write what I'm avoiding, what I'm afraid will happen if I try. What's the smallest possible first move? When will I make that move? This transforms vague resistance into specific action. Fear lives in vagueness. Action requires specificity. The implementation protocol. Week 1. Establish the 2 habit. Choose one thing you've been procrastinating. Commit to 2 minutes daily. Do it first. Thing in the morning. Track completion in journal. Week 2. Add the second commitment. First 2-minute practice now feels easy. Add second 2-minute practice. Different area of life. Continue morning implementation. Week 3. Build the chain. Both practices now habitually at third 2-minute commitment. Begin. Evening review. Practice count consecutive days. Never break. Chain. Week 4. Natural expansion. Most 2-minute sessions. Naturally extend some days. Still only 2-minute stats. Okay, momentum is now self-sustained. Is dramatically reduced by week 4. You are a different person, Takeda observed. Not because you've achieved everything, but because you've proven to yourself you are someone who begins, someone who follows through, someone who doesn't.
Who doesn't let resistance win. When 2 minutes isn't enough. 3 months into his practice, Hideaki faced a new problem. Master, the 2-minute move works for starting. But some tasks require sustained focus. How do I maintain momentum through large projects? Now you're ready for the 7th teaching. Chain 2-minute moves into marathon sessions. Takeda explained the technique. Large projects overwhelm because you see them whole. But every large project is just many small moves chained together. So you use what I call Tsuzukaru Kashin, continuing advancement. The method. Commit to first 2 minutes, easy start. When 2 minutes end, ask, 2 more minutes? If yes, commit to just 2 more. Repeat until natural stopping point. Never commit to more than 2 minutes ahead. Why does this work? Hideaki asked. Because your mind can always do 2 more minutes. The marathon runner doesn't think, I must run 26 miles. He thinks, I can run to that next tree. Then the next tree. Then the next. Many small commitments create one large achievement. The obstacle pre-mortem. The 8th teaching addresses a deeper issue, Takeda said. Anticipate your future self's resistance. He taught Hideaki a practice called Maetsusa, looking ahead. Every Sunday evening, Hideaki would list next week's 2-minute commitments. For each, write, what might make me skip this? For each obstacle, create, if obstacle, then alternative. Example. Commitment, morning sword practice. Obstacle, might wake up late. If late, do 2 minutes before leaving house. Your future self will find reasons not to follow through, Takeda explained. But if you plan for those reasons now, your future self has no excuse. The path is already clear. The procrastination emergency protocol. What about days when resistance is overwhelming? Hideaki asked. When even 2 minutes feels impossible. The 9th teaching, the absolute minimum protocol. Takeda outlined what he called
Saisho no Agoki, the smallest movement. When even 2 minutes feels impossible. Level 1. Do 2 minutes anyway, willpower push. Level 2. do 1 minute, half commitment. Level 3, do 10 seconds, symbolic action. Level 4, touch the tools, establish presence. Level 5, think about doing it while doing something else. Level 6, write about why you're resisting. The key is never zero, Takeda emphasized. Even level 6, just writing about resistance, is better than zero. It keeps the momentum alive. It tells your mind, we don't skip, we just scale down. The power of public commitment. The 10th teaching comes from understanding human nature, Takeda said. Accountability amplifies action. He explained, tell no one your goals, and only your weak motivation sustains you. Tell others your commitments, and social pressure aids discipline. Takeda had Hideaki tell 3 people about his daily 2-minute commitments. Report completion to them each evening. If he missed a day, explain why. Accept that others were counting on his word. This isn't about fear of judgment, Takeda clarified. It's about becoming a person whose word means something. When you say you'll do something, you do it. This identity is forged through kept commitments. The first true test. 6 months into Hideaki's training, Takeda announced, tomorrow, you will demonstrate everything you've learned to the other students. If you've truly mastered Koden Obscure, this news won't send you into procrastination. Hideaki felt the familiar resistance rising. He wanted to prepare, to practice extra, to make sure he was ready. Then he caught himself. This was the old pattern. Preparing to prepare, waiting to feel ready. Instead, he applied the system. Evening preparation, 2 minutes. Laid out his training clothes. Reviewed one technique mentally. Wrote in resistance journal. Fear of public failure. But I've done this 1,000 times in practice. First move, walk to center of dojo. That's all. Morning, to center of dojo. Morning execution. Woke up, 5-4-3-2-1, stood up. No time for resistance to build. Dressed, walked to dojo. First 2 minutes, warm-up movements. Momentum carried him through. The demonstration went well. Not perfect, he made mistakes. But he'd begun. He'd shown up. He'd completed. Afterward, Takeda said, this is the transformation. 6 months ago, you'd have spent 3 months preparing and then found an excuse not to show up. Today, you started before you felt ready. This is what I've been teaching you. The business crisis. One of Takeda's students, a merchant named Hiro, came to him in distress. Master, I'm failing. My business is dying. I have decisions to make, but I keep delaying them. I research endlessly but never act. What do I do? Takeda turned to Hideaki. Show him what you've learned. Hideaki taught Hiro the 2-minute move. What's one decision you've been procrastinating? I need to let go of a failing product line, Hiro admitted. I know it's not working, but I keep hoping it'll turn around. I need to cut my losses. What's the smallest first move toward that decision? I guess I need to calculate exactly how much I'm losing. How long would that take? Maybe an hour to gather all the information. Too big. What's the 2-minute version? I could open my ledger and look at last month's numbers. Do it now. Just 2 minutes. Hiro did. In 2 minutes, the numbers made the truth obvious. The product line was hemorrhaging money. The decision became clear. I've been avoiding looking at the numbers for 6 months, Hiro realized. Because I didn't want to face the truth. 2 minutes of actually looking made the decision easy. This is the power, Hideaki explained. Procrastination lives in vagueness. Action requires specificity. 2 minutes of specific action destroys 6 months of vague worry. The creative block. A young artist named Yuki came to the dojo. I want to paint, but I'm blocked. I haven't created anything in a year. I sit before the canvas and nothing. What happens when you sit before the canvas? Hideaki asked, applying what he'd learned. I think this needs to be good. It needs to mean something. I need to have a vision. I need inspiration. And while you wait for all that, you create nothing. Yes. So we apply Koden Obscure. Give yourself permission to paint badly. Commit to 2 minutes of bad painting. Put anything on the canvas, doesn't matter what. Quality is not the goal. Moving the brush is the goal. Yuki tried. She put a clumsy stroke of blue on the canvas. Then another. Then, before she realized it, 30 minutes had passed, and something was emerging. Not a masterpiece, but something. Movement where there had been paralysis. The perfectionist waits for inspiration, Hideaki explained. The warrior creates through action, and inspiration follows. The student's revenge. 6 months after the demonstration, Another student, a rival named Daiki who'd always resented Hideaki's progress, challenged him to a duel. The old Hideaki would have panicked, procrastinated preparing, psyched himself out. But the new Hideaki applied the system. Preparation, not procrastination. 2 minutes visualizing the duel, not hours of anxious worry. 2 minutes reviewing technique, not endless nervous practice. 2 minutes meditation, centering, not catastrophizing. The duel itself. 5-4-3-2-1 mental count when the signal came. First move committed to before thinking. Momentum carried through. Hideaki won. Not because he was more skilled, they were evenly matched, but because he acted decisively while Daiki hesitated, overthought, waited for the perfect opening that never came. This is the warrior's advantage, Takeda observed afterward. Not greater skill, greater immediacy, the ability to act now instead of waiting for perfect circumstances. The anniversary. 1 year after beginning his training in Koden Obscure, Hideaki stood before Takeda. For evaluation. Tell me what has changed, Takeda commanded. Everything, master. A year ago, I was paralyzed by procrastination. I had dreams, but took no action. I prepared endlessly, but never began. I waited for readiness that never came. And now I understand. Beginning is everything. The 2-minute move has become automatic. I don't think about starting, I just start. And once started, continuing is natural. Show me your journal. Hideaki presented his journal. 365 days recorded. Not a single 0 day. Some days, only 2 minutes. Many days, hours of practice that began with 2 minutes. But never 0. What have you accomplished? Takeda asked. I've mastered 12 advanced techniques I'd been avoiding. I've completed 3 major projects I'd been procrastinating for years. I've helped 4 other students overcome their own procrastination. I've become someone who follows through. That last one is most important, Takeda noted. You haven't just accomplished tasks. You've changed your identity. You are no longer someone who procrastinates. You are someone who begins. This identity shift is permanent. The teaching spreads. Word of Hideaki's transformation spread. Students from other dojos came to learn Koden Obscure. Hideaki found himself teaching others. The merchant who'd been delaying expansion taught the 2-minute move. Within 3 months, the merchant had opened 2 new locations he'd been planning to open for 5 years. The writer who couldn't finish their book taught the no 0 days principle. Write 1 sentence per day? Just 1. In 8 months, the book was complete. The warrior who feared actual combat taught beginning in darkness. Stop preparing. Start fighting. You'll learn faster in 1 real encounter than in 100 imagined ones. The warrior became legendary for his decisiveness. The artist who'd been blocked for a decade taught permission to suck. Your first 100 paintings will probably be bad. Paint them anyway. Masters aren't born. They're made through bad work that becomes good work. The artist created prolifically. Each success validated the system. The principles weren't theory. They were practical, proven tools that transformed lives. The ultimate test. In the spring of the 2nd year, war came to the region. Real war, not training. Takeda's dojo was called to defend their lord's castle. This was the ultimate test. Would Koden Obscure work not just in practice, but in life or death situations? The night before battle, many samurai sat paralyzed by fear and anticipation. They prepared endlessly, checked their armor repeatedly, catastrophized about the coming fight. But Hideaki and those he taught, they applied the principles. 2-minute move. Check armor once, methodically, for 2 minutes. Then stop. No 0 days. Do 1 practice kata. Establish normalcy and calm. Begin in darkness. Accept that tomorrow is uncertain. Act despite uncertainty. 5-4-3-2-1. When fear rises, count backwards and take action. Give yourself permission to be afraid. Fear is normal. Acting despite fear is courage. The battle came. In the chaos, those who'd mastered immediate action survived and thrived. Those who hesitated, overthought, waited for perfect circumstances, many fell. Hideaki found that combat was not so different from the training. The same principles applied. Act before thinking. Commit to the next move, not the whole battle. Begin even when afraid. Keep momentum once established. He survived. More, he